Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Financially Forever After, a love and money podcast. We are your hosts, Lindsay and
Brett the Moneymaker, Schunkweiler.
Here to give you some tips and advice on the love and relationship side, as well as the
Financial tips, financial advice.
questions, burning questions people have about how to make some money.
Yeah.
How to save.
We had some response today at the website, from the website, asking some questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to do some answering the listeners' questions.
And if people do have questions that aren't going to be addressed today, where can they ask those questions?
They can go to the website, financiallyforeverafter.com, financially the number 4, everafter.com. Just click on I think it's got a question mark and it's a bunch of words going around it. And it says, ask a question, leave a comment, put it in there, and then we might address your question or comment on our next
future
show.
episodes. Yeah. You can also post those comments on our YouTube channel as well as our Instagram page or our Facebook page. We'd love to answer questions if you have them. And last week we filmed about, what was our topic? Terrible first dates. So if you have any, still have any embarrassing or stories that you'd like to share that we can read
or maybe
online.
one that went really well. And you're like, here's a date idea.
Tips
so if anybody's got a great
date
idea, we could share that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. What else is going on in the world of finance? Anything that we need to know about?
I don't know about the world of finance, but how about the world of our lives with dance competitions?
We got dance competition in full swing. We're going on our first airplane ride since all of this has been going down. I feel like now that it's on my mind, all this stuff is popping up on social media. So I'm like more exposed to it. And now I'm just freaking myself out. But someone had posted a reel about, how they do the safety instructions in the beginning. Gosh. And he's like taking out like notes and like putting his glasses on and reading through like the things that we never paid attention to. But like, I need to pay attention to now.
What
for
if
the
you
safety.
land and your plane flips over? What if you land and it slides to the side?
Someone had said, well, what you should do is always look at the flight attendants. If they seem nervous, then you should seem nervous. So that's probably good advice.
Yeah.
Just things to think about.
Have you ever left? Have you ever got off a plane early?
Like, what do you mean?
Have you ever got on a plane and then got off the plane and like, no, I ain't doing this?
Never.
I have.
You have?
I have one time.
You left a plane?
I left a plane.
Why?
I wasn't anxious or anything though.
Why?
I left with your dad.
Why?
Because what happened is we sat so long in the plane just waiting to leave. They're like, oh, we'll leave here shortly. Oh, we're waiting to get the final papers. Oh, we're waiting for this.
Did they try to stop you?
We're waiting for that. And I told your dad, I'm like, Rick, we ain't going to make this next flight. Like, we will not make our connecting flight. They are taking too long.
Yeah.
I go, we need to go back in and try to redirect.
Yeah.
So that's what we got stuck in Chicago one time. So, there's a fog coming off of the, I don't know.
Were you
lake
still at the
like
gate stopped though?
Yeah.
So
I could get back
the door
on.
Closed?
No, because they're like waiting for something. So I was like, all right. I'm like, we got to go. So like we stood up, grabbed our bags, and we left.
Did they say anything?
No.
That's crazy. I've never. I thought you were going to say you had like a bad feeling. Like,
no, I didn't have a bad feeling.
This plane is going to crash.
What was that? Movie back then. Like, there was one thing.
Final Destination.
Final Destination. Yeah. I was like, no, I didn't have any
every
Final
millennial
Destination.
That's ever, so I will not
at all.
drive behind a semi that's carrying logs.
Those logs. Yeah.
Oh, heck no. There are so many things from that movie. I'm like, no. So next time you're on a flight and you need to get off, just tell the plane the phalanges are missing,
the phalanges from Friends. Yeah.
And then you can just get off the plane.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll work.
So let's get into our topic today on our relationship stuff.
Okay.
So I want to go deeper into this because we've briefly discussed this on past episodes, but we've not actually ever officially talked about it. Mm-hmm. And today we're going to talk about the 5 love languages and go deeper into what those are, because people might have heard past episodes and hearing us talk about how important they are, but not necessarily knowing what does that apply? Why is that important? Mm-hmm. So they come based on Gary Chapman's concept of the 5 love languages. There's actually a book that you can purchase and read. Highly recommend doing it. It's just a good way to really dive in deeper into what those 5 love languages are and why they're important in your relationship. Mm-hmm. So I want to quiz you to start off. Do you remember any of those 5 love languages.
Yeah, so I know you read the book on this, and let's be real, I'm not going to read the book. I'm just not. But is there like a Cliff Notes version or a audio version that you can listen to?
There
Because
could
I would be all about that. I'm like, if it's super important to you, I'd
Yeah.
make it important to me, and I
Yeah.
would say, hey, you know what? If you said, I think this is important that you listen because this is where I'm at. I think you need to know more about this, more about that. I'd look into it because I care about, how you feel or, in regards to how I view things to you and,
what they
and
are
vice versa. Yeah.
and how they kind of apply to our relationship. So, I think audio book is definitely available. And I know there's I think there's a podcast that kind of discuss more about this topic specifically, but let's circle back to what those 5 languages are.
We have talked about it before.
I want to see if you remember.
I would say acts of kindness or acts of love is one, or like doing things for them.
Okay.
And
so
then
acts of service is what it's labeled at. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Touch is one.
Mm-hmm. Physical touch.
Physical touch.
Yep.
Yeah. I got 2.
Yeah.
I got 2.
You got 2. Is that all? Is that all you got?
I got 2. That's what I got.
Let's see. Maybe those
Listening.
apply to us.
There's probably a listening
There's
one.
probably a reason why you know those, because maybe they are us.
That's because I know, like, I got a lot of times I'm the touch one.
Okay, so you got 2 out of 5.
Acts of kindness one.
I'm not a math guru. What's the percentage of that?
You know what? I got the ones that pertain to us.
Okay.
All right. Do I need to know the other ones?
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because just because you might be a strong certain way, there might be another love language that pertains to you
and I'm
as
sure
well.
I'm just not thinking of them that obviously we do or talk about
it's
or
fair.
whatnot.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other ones you're missing are receiving gifts. So you like to get gifts. Although I don't think it's just receiving gifts. I think it's also giving gifts.
Hold on. So I got a question on that. Does that count as well as like receiving a compliment?
Ooh, good question.
Because you're not the best at that. I tell you compliment,
you're right.
and then you turn it into a negative. I'm like, just so you know, that was a compliment.
You are right.
kind of took that and you twisted it and made it a negative.
I'm awkward with comments or compliments. Or if someone's like, I really like your outfit today, or you look so pretty. I'm like, I
don't tell me that.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, my hair is so gross today. Oh, I haven't showered in 3 days. I always come up with, you're right. I think that's a little bit of a Midwest thing too. I don't think Midwesterners on average respond well to compliments, where we always, oh, well, but this happened. I don't think we just sit on it very easily.
I think that might be something we need to work on, because a common response is thank you.
Yeah, and also
then
to give a compliment
hey,
back.
just so you know, I like your shirt.
Yes, exactly.
I like your earrings.
But then sometimes I feel like that's forced. Like if I give a compliment and then someone's like, oh, thank you, I like your shoes.
Yeah.
Like
I get it.
Okay.
That's what
you
gotta,
really like my shoes.
Gradually, like 5 minutes later,
Right.
like, oh, you know what? I did notice this.
Yeah. Maybe not right away after.
So it's not as so forced.
So the gifts, I think it's just broad range gifts. I can't remember from reading the book if that's so giving gifts and receiving it. So quality time is the other one. And then physical touch, words of affirmation. Yeah. So I think that's where it falls into the compliments, the words of affirmation, like you're doing a great job, and that's where that would fall in. And then you touched on acts of service. So for giving examples, so words of affirmation, compliments, just like you had mentioned, encouraging words, as far as, you're doing a great job. I really appreciate you as a leader. I really appreciate you as a mother. You have been raising these kids so well. You are such a kind mother. You bake well, whatever it is, fill in the blank. Again, I'm not good with words. So
I got words.
I got the best words. Verbal appreciation. So those all follow under the words of affirmation. Acts of service, obviously doing things to help your partner, cooking. If your partner's maybe the one that cooks all the time, taking the initiative to make a meal once or twice a week so they don't have to. Chores, if your spouse or your partner is the one that's always usually doing the housework, maybe making sure the house is picked up, making sure your shoes are off so that the floors that they just scrubbed were clean, that sort of thing, where you're being conscious of that.
Question for you though. So you read this book, or you go, or your husband goes through it, or spouse, or whatever it is, significant other goes through it. Then what? Like, how do you know which one it is? Like, do you just have to have a
think you have a
conversation with it?
clear-
Or you're like, hey, I'm this one, just so you know I'm this one, you tell them? Or is there like a quiz or something
There
like that?
is.
that you
There's
find
a
out?
quiz. Yep. And there's a quiz online. I think it's a free quiz that you can fill out, but in the book specifically, there is a quiz. I think you're kind of going to know what you are just based on knowing what these things are. But like I said, you could be equally there could be two love languages that really speak to you. So taking the quiz kind of helps you narrow it down to say, yeah, that's definitely where what category I fall into.
Okay.
And again, that can help you and your spouse or partner really figure it out so that you can take initiative to say, okay, now that your acts of service, I'm really going to step up my game as far as doing these things for my spouse or my partner. Receiving gifts, thoughtful presents that show you know your partner well. So putting in the effort. So that's why I don't think it's receiving gifts on your end. It's the act of giving gifts.
Thoughtful presence. Is it
So
presence
your mom
like
was
the actual
definitely-
like giving a gift, or like the presence of being there? Which one are you talking about?
The presence of buying, like your mom was definitely in that category. She loved to buy gifts for our the grandkids. That was just her act of love. We had told her many times, like, save your money, like don't be buying all these things. And she just loved to give gifts. Like that was one of her love languages. So
Got it.
So telling someone that's their act of love or the love language,
like,
not to
don't
do that,
yeah.
that's kind of hard for them. So
Actually, like when I am meeting with clients sometimes, and I know that, like, I think of one particular client that lives about an hour and a half away, and she has for years and years, like we're talking 30 some years, and she's got foster kids and she's got normal kids, and she just loves to give gifts all the time. And then her husband unfortunately recently passed away, and I have been telling her, I'm like, you're going to have this conversation with your kids that you cannot keep giving this amount of money, because otherwise you're not going to be okay. Like you're not going to have enough money based on the pace that you're going. So it was between her and her son, is actually helping her son and the other two kids, like having that conversation, like, hey, all the grandkids keep asking, and Nana or grandma or whatever you want to be referred to as, can't afford to do this anymore. So you need to tell your kids, which is the grandkids, to stop asking, because otherwise you're going to put grandma in a bad spot, because that's how she does stuff.
Yep,
and
that's her act.
She's going to have a really tough time saying no
Love language,
on
yeah.
that. So just to kind of tie that into the
To help
financial piece,
someone.
just because you said that, it kind of spurred my mind a little bit.
And I think that's the only one that it can be challenging financially. It is that one, because the rest of them doesn't really involve money per se. So that if that's your love language, you really want to be cautious and conscious of what you're spending, because you can get yourself into big time debt if that's your love language. Quality time is spending undivided attention, engaging in meaningful activities. So again, I think that was a love language for your mom. She was really good at making up these, what they were like, escape rooms and things with the kids, or just the quality time she would spend with the grandkids. She had passed 3 years ago, but that was just something that was really great about her, is her quality time that she made each time with the kids count, and they still remember those things. So
and as you're listening, if you're a grandparent, and that's one of the best things you can do, is just spend the time.
Yes,
absolutely. They don't care about all this stuff. And how many
gifts.
times you give them a gift and like, oh, thank you, and then they play with it for like an hour or two, and then they're done.
Yeah,
like they care about the memories that you create.
But
with
again,
them,
you don't want to step on the
them.
people that's love language is the gifts, because that to them is important. So I feel like those people really take the time to, what makes this person tick, and I want to find a gift that's really special. So I don't feel like it's just random mall junk that they're buying. It's sometimes, but I feel like they're more conscious of like, what is something that's really special to them, that's meaningful.
You're not wrong. I would just say try to find a way to tie that in to something that you would do.
Quality
so for
time.
instance, like my mom bought our son before she passed, so we ended up giving him to him over Christmas that time frame, like cards. And he's a Ravens fan.
Yeah.
She's like, all right, well, you give him the cards, but like maybe play a game with them.
Yeah.
Play some type of card game with them in regards to those cards. So you're spending some quality time together.
Exactly. And then the last one is physical touch, hugs, hand holding, affectionate gestures. So let's discuss. What are you, babe? What is your love language? Do you feel like there's more than one?
I would say yes, more than one. I'm touch for sure is one. Anytime I get like appreciation for something, like that's good.
So words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation are good just because it seems like, I'm going to say no fault of yours, but the kids, I'm just so busy with everything I do all the time. I don't hear it a lot.
Yeah.
And being the boss at my office and like overseeing a bunch of people and overseeing the staff, like I have to give them compliments and tell them they're doing good and tell them this, like, but if you're the high up one, like no one's giving you anything. It's just like you work your butt off all the time to try to make so many people happy.
Yeah.
It's probably the same thing for.
And if that's your love language.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's love, but it's like, all right, well, when our daughter asked me the other day, Dad, how was your day? I'm like, oh, you asked me about my day. Like, that's cool. I'm always asking you guys about your day.
Absolutely.
Like, it doesn't have to be all the time, but every once in a while, like, well, that's kind of nice. Hearing that.
I definitely, and I think yours is quality time too, because I feel like you like to
100%,
play games with the kids. You're always wanting, whether they want to or not, they're always like, Dad's home, I gotta play a game, so, but you enjoy that because you're working, and when you're home with them,
I mean, I
want to spend that time
a lot of times lately we end up at 4 something, 5 o'clock in the morning, but what I don't want to sacrifice is quality family time. It's like, hey, I'm off at 5, from 5:30 when I get home till 8:30, 9 o'clock they go to bed.
Yeah.
That's our time. If I got to work more again at night or early in the morning, fine, so be it. But I don't want to sacrifice quality time with the family.
Totally understandable.
How about you?
I would say definitely the acts of service is my number one. I do a lot around the house. I do a lot with the kids. So having someone, even the kids, even when they cook a dinner and it's not that good, but they did it and I didn't have to. That to me that's awesome. That's a big act of, for me, act of service. Yeah. So big love language, I should say, when they're doing.
You
those
get some interesting meals.
We do.
Too.
We do.
A lot of noodles.
Yeah. A lot of noodles.
It's just sometimes noodle or like buttered noodles.
Buttered noodles. But you have to appreciate it because they took the effort to do it. Right.
And,
or even cleaning. They're never up to my standards in cleaning, or laundry, but they're doing it. You got to let them do it. Or me coming home, if I went out with girlfriends for the night and you had the kitchen cleaned up or the dishes put away, like that to me is like, oh, that's awesome. I appreciate that. And then I'm with you. I think my second one's more of the words of affirmations. Although I don't take a compliment well, I do like to be acknowledged if I'm doing a job well done. Like that to me, or, them saying we're acknowledging your hard work and efforts. That to me is another love language. So there you go. If you do have questions about your love languages or how to do that, again, you can find those quizzes online or check out that book. Highly recommend.
What's the name of the book again?
It's called The 5 Love Languages, and it's by Gary Chapman.
Gary Chapman. Okay, there's a resource.
So there you go. So find out what those love languages are. Maybe tap into them. Maybe not even tell your significant other. Maybe just try to do it and see if they even acknowledge it or if they notice it. A week or two
goes, but then bring it up and then have that conversation, because I know we had the conversation and then we realized and we try to do
we're more
of
conscious of it now. Yep. Absolutely. So great stuff on the love side, but what do we have today for the financial side?
I told you some questions came in regards to financials. So Corey H went to financially4everafter.com, asked a question, left a comment. So he has about 4 or 5 different questions I actually gave to you that you're going to read, and I'll answer them. I'll go through the financial answers here.
Yes. Well, thank you, Corey H, for writing in with those questions. So question number 1, as a W-2 employee working for a company offering a 401k, how important is it to find a professional to help you review how your investments are allocated? Or should you just rely on the HR department advice?
I'm kind of like a robot reading that.
Oh, I felt like it was very eloquent.
Oh, okay. All right. Got it. So it's very important because as you're planning for your retirement, you should have a certain portion of your portfolio safer, and you should have a certain portion of your portfolio riskier. Some people are like, nah, I'm just, guns a-blazing. I want to go all stock market. And there's other people, I just want to go all safe. That's fine. There's some extremes in there if that's the only way that you're wired. But from a big picture investment standpoint, you should have some on both sides of the aisle, on the risky side and on the safe side. So there's a basic rule that you can follow to say, all right, well, I don't want to think too hard about this. How much should I have safe and how much should I have risky? And it's called the rule of 100. I think we might have addressed this before, Lindsay. Do you remember the rule of 100 and how that works?
I just feel like we just did an 80 rule last week. Now we're on to a 100 rule. There's so many rules. No, I don't remember the 100 rule. What is it?
I thought you'd never ask. Okay, so the rule of 100 says 100 minus your age, from a percentage standpoint, is how much money you should have risky in the market. So simply put, if you're 20, you should have about 20% of your portfolio safe. So really, however young you are, if you're 20 years young, 20% safe. If you're 30 years young, 30% safe.
I like how you do that.
Yeah.
20 years young.
Yeah. So, I mean, no one wants to be called old.
You're right.
Yeah, they want to be called young.
And that your mother is a teenager.
Let's not go too far there. Yeah, no, that's weird.
Our son's friends think that I am a teenager.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Say, okay. You say so. All right. So anyway, however young you are, you want that much safe. So, you can take much more risk when you're 20 than what you should be taking when you're 60. So if you're 60, you want to have about 60% of your portfolio safe and 40% at risk. But then the big question is, okay, this person, as Corey asked, like, all right, well, how much should I be putting into my 401k for the risky side and the safe side? My HR person really not going to tell me, and they can't really by law tell you what percentages to put where. So that's a basic rule on, all right, is there any safe investments in there, such a lot of times as bonds or some type of fixed or guaranteed rate of return? And then you have to look on the riskier side. It could be large cap stocks, which is a lot of times like the S&P 500 ones, such as like NVIDIA and Coca-Cola and Microsoft and Amazon and Apple. Like all those big stocks are part of the S&P 500. So those are large cap stocks. Medium, small cap. You can get an international. I'm not a big fan of that based on the historicals, but typically large cap is a good place you could be for some of that riskier part of your portfolio. But you also got to think about what type of money you're putting in. So when you said, Linz, ask your HR person or talk to your HR person, or should you get advice above and beyond that, do you have a Roth 401k option compared to a traditional 401k option or Roth TSP? One more time, we went over this last week. What's the difference from a Roth compared to traditional? Do you remember the difference from traditional money compared to Roth money?
Roth money, it's based on how it's taxed.
Yes, it's based on how it's taxed.
I'm going to go back
is it
to
taxed?
that.
How is Roth
time.
money taxed?
It's taxed up front.
It's taxed up front. So then what? So say I put $5,000 into my Roth. Then what happens? So I'm 40 years old. Or young, 40 years young, and I put $5,000 into Roth, and it grows, and at age anytime 59 and a half or later, it's worth, let's just say that $5,000 worth 20 grand.
Okay.
When I pull it out,
yes.
How much taxes do I have to pay on that 20 grand?
None.
Woo! None, yeah.
I got it right.
You got it right. Good job. Okay, so conversely, if you put that money into a 401k or an IRA, if you put $5,000 into that, and that $5,000, and say you're 40 again, and it grows to the same 20,000, and then you withdraw it at age 60, we'll say, how much taxes do you have to pay?
You do have to pay taxes on that.
Okay.
I don't know how much, 5%?
Ah, well, that's a good question. We don't really know.
Yeah, okay.
Because it depends on what your ordinary tax bracket is at that particular time, whether
Okay.
you're making more money, less money, what the tax brackets are.
Gotcha.
But you have to pay your full
But
ordinary
when you're
income
putting it
at
in,
that
there's
time.
no taxes on it when you're putting it in.
Yep.
It's
So,
tax-free money.
so for instance, let's just make it simple. So say you make $100,000 a year and you put money into a Roth IRA. Do you get a benefit, Linz, by putting that $5,000 into a Roth IRA when you're age 40? Up front. Is there a tax benefit?
If you're putting it up.
So at age 40, you put $5,000.
Probably there. So this is the one where you're not getting taxed right up front.
So we're going to say you're putting it into a Roth IRA or Roth 401k.
Maybe at 40 it's better because you're younger, so your tax bracket's higher.
So what happens is if you put it into a Roth, you don't get any tax break up front. So if you're doing it like a Roth 401k, you in essence, you have to pay the tax up front on it. But it grows tax-free, get it out tax-free. So if you make $100,000 and you put $5,000 in a Roth, you still pay taxes on the $100,000. If you have the same $100,000 of income at age 40 and you put $5,000 into a 401k or traditional IRA, if you can get a deductible one, you only actually have to pay taxes on $95,000. So you get a little bit of a break up front. However, on the back end, when you need the money the most, when you're not working anymore, and more than likely taxes are probably going to go up between now and then you have to withdraw it. And it's all taxable at that particular time. So you have to also look to see, should you be contributing to a Roth retirement account, a Roth 401k, TSP, things of that nature, if that's available. Not all retirement companies have that available, but most of them do at this point.
All right, good stuff. We have couple more questions, but we're going to only get into one more today for timing purposes. So second question is, with a company offering a 401k, talk about the importance of ensuring the employee is maximizing their contributions to ensure they are getting the full employer match. So can you give a couple case scenarios of if the employee leaves the employer match on the table, how much money could they be possibly missing out on in 10, 20, and 30 years?
So we looked at, since Corey asked us, I kind of looked ahead of time and I said, all right, well, how much would it actually be if you put money in when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and what would that accrue to? And we just had to do some base assumption out of the 7% rate of return. And if you did not do it, so we're going to say, hey, you're making $50,000 a year. You could make way more than this. Could make less than this, but $50,000 a year, and you put in, say, $3,000. So 6% is what the amount was that we put in there, and you got matched $3,000. So you put in 6%, got matched 6%. What would that grow to? And if you did it when you were 20, that would actually grow to, by the time you hit 60, roughly about $2 million. However, if you waited to your 50s to do it, much less, it was like $140,000 or something of that nature. So you're like, well, what's the mathematical difference from starting early to waiting that long? Well, you see about $1.8, $1.9 million just by waiting to start saving for your retirement plan. So the earlier the better. So Corey asked, well, what if I am not taking advantage of that employer match? Well, it depends on what the match is. Sometimes they don't match all the way up to 100%. Sometimes they only match half of that. So if you're not taking advantage of that and they match the same amount, so if you would have put in $3,000 and they would have put in $3,000 and you're giving up their $3,000 match, let's just say you're in essence giving up $3,000 or you're giving up half of it. Well, let's cut that in half. It's pretty simple. It's if you're not taking advantage of it, you're losing out on probably $800,000-$900,000 of additional money that could have been in your pocket. But the key is we like Roth money. We like that money growing tax-free, get it out tax-free. If you are contributing your money to the Roth side, the employer's contribution typically always goes to the traditional side. Do you know why that is? Why don't they put it on the Roth side?
So they don't have to pay the taxes in the end when you take it out?
So what happens is, since the employer is actually contributing to the plan in regards to the employer's taxes, they get a deduction from putting that in. You got to think about it. The federal government, they're giving the employer a deduction for contributing and helping out. They don't want to give them the tax benefit of that as well. So as that employee's traditional account keeps growing and growing and growing, when they have to withdraw that later, it's all going to be taxable, which means they're going to recoup that money. So a lot of people think, oh, the federal government sure is nice to us, allowing us to get this nice tax deduction to put the money in. Yeah, they absolutely love it. Why? Because on the back end, it grew all tax deferred. It's withdrawn all tax free. So they get a much larger piece of the pie by having it grow and compound. So then when it's withdrawn, it's all taxable. So they get more money. And let's be real. We're 36 trillion plus dollars in debt and accruing and accruing and accruing. They need as much tax money as they can possibly get.
Well, who knows, with Elon Musk's going through everything, maybe we'll start to get out of some of that debt.
Well, we'll see. I don't know. He's interesting on how he's doing it. So we'll see.
Very interesting. So yeah, if you are not up to the news on that, it's kind of interesting. I'm not even that's not something I'm really into or focused on, but you were talking about some of the ways he's going through and figuring out where debt is coming from and how to get rid of it. It's interesting where some of the money is going. So
yeah,
it's kind of crazy stuff happening in the world
and
right now.
scary things on how
for
it's
sure.
being done, gone through, all
for
that
sure.
good stuff.
If people like Corey H have questions and want to get those addressed on the podcast, where can they ask those questions?
Once again, go to financially4everafter.com and click on that button that says ask a question, leave a comment, put your basic info in there, and then ask your question, and we'll address it more than likely on that next show and give you a call out, your name.
Or if you want to comment on this podcast specifically with anything that we mentioned today or add to it, feel free to do that. You can do that on Instagram, our Facebook account, as well as our YouTube channel. And we'd be happy to answer some of those questions online too, as well, if people just want a response to their comments. So thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Financially Forever After, a Love and Money podcast.